12 Stones is a voyage of discovery, a journey through some hard times, poor decisions, and colorful adventures to wholeness and redemption. It is a true story of Barbara Carole, a secular Jew who worships art and romance and who tries to unravel the meaning of existence and make every moment a masterpiece. She lives and loves with passion, though not always with wisdom, in the Parisian garrets and the Moroccan villages, in the light of southern France, and in sunny California, while embracing the drama of life and in inhaling the fragrance of flowers along her path. Her search is sometimes misguided by intensity and misled by intellectualism. At the zenith of her quest, Barbara discovers something even more meaningful than truth. She encounters the source of love. Her life-changing confrontation with God transforms a strong-willed, sensual, tough-minded individualist, and then her real journey begins.
In the book, I was describing how coming into the church was like coming into a huge, loving family. And anywhere in the world that I travel, I find a church on Sunday, and it's like visiting relatives. But at the same time, coming into the church for me was like coming into a foreign land. It's a culture so different from the one I'd known. And in the church, I learned something, and it's probably so obvious to you and to most people, but it was in the church where I learned for the first time that families can actually be wonderful. I know it sounds bizarre, but that's the way it was. I saw children growing up in the security of God's love. I saw happy, attentive parents who actually enjoyed their children. In the church, I met women, and in this church as well, who have told me how they had fallen in love with a fine young man and married him and loved him through all the years of child rearing into old age and unto death. And I know a lot of you have experienced the beauty of that kind of life. But it sure wasn't what my life would be like. And there were times when I wished it were. And once I shared this feeling of wistful longing, that's dishonest, let's call it what it really was. It was envy. When I shared my envy with my pastor's wife in California, she surprised me with her response. She says, "Why do you wish your life had been ordinary like mine? A lot of women wish they could have had the adventures and exciting times that you had." I stopped to think about that. Well, yes, I did have what she described as adventures and exciting times, but it came at a high price. It cost me the peace and security of a traditional family. So I ask you, is one way of living better than another? It's a fool's question. It's like asking which is more beautiful, a rose or a lily, a lake in the forest or the seashore. Which tastes better, vanilla or chocolate? Which talent is more valuable, a scientific mind or an artistic one? Which is most attractive, a blonde or a brunette? It's taken me a long time, more than 50 years, to understand that beauty comes in different forms. In the same way, each life that God gives to us has its own splendor. And God knows, as I've learned, far better than we do, which life is the best life for who we are, for the person He created us to be. Envy is such a funny thing. Why didn't I get Mary Jane's brilliance? Why can't I be musically talented like John? Why isn't my husband as successful as Susie's husband? Why didn't God give me Annabelle's long, slim legs? That one's mine. Most of us are afflicted with envy. If I had only done this instead of that. If. You know what? If will kill us. It will bury us. If is from Satan. We all know, and we all forget, that we are to focus on what we have, not on what we do not have. And while we're taking an inventory of the gifts that we do have, remember, it's not boasting. It is not pride to be aware of your gifts. It's only bad if we use them to make ourselves greater than someone else, or to belittle someone who doesn't have the same gift. And it's prideful if we take credit for our gifts. We have to remember that we didn't create our gifts, they're given to us by God. So as long as we give the praise and the glory to Him rather than to ourselves, as long as we understand a gift is entrusted to us and carries responsibility to use them to glorify God, then I think it's important to acknowledge our gifts. And Pastor Larry once said, and I thought this was important, so I listened carefully. He said, I like it, God does not hold us accountable to use the gifts He gave to someone else. He holds us accountable to use the gifts He gave to us. And that's all we have to be concerned about. Am I honoring the gifts He gave to me? Am I honoring the life He gave to me? There's a lot in my life, looking back, that I don't like and I wish had been different. But one thing I would not exchange for anything else. Despite my fear, I did step out. I was more passionate about discovering the truth than about my comfort and security. And it was a passion that led down many unexpected paths and eventually led to the truth of God's love. So it was the life I was meant to have. And I found a passage written in the 1800s, which for me was the greatest cure for envy. I liked it so much I stuck it in the beginning of the book. It says, "O my soul, it is not only after the future thou must aspire. Thou must aspire to see the glory of thy past. Thou must find the glory of that way by which thy God has led thee, and be able, even of thy sorrow, to say, this was the gate of heaven." In a similar way, Pastor Larry also said in a sermon that we should embrace our brokenness and make peace with it. So I thought about that for a moment. What else do we have but our broken past? If we embrace it, God can use our hurts, our losses, even our disabilities for His purpose and His glory. And I truly hope with all my heart that my book does that. Oh, and by the way, do you know why I call it 12 stones? Does anyone recall the passage in Joshua 4, 24? It's where Joshua sets up an altar of 12 stones to remind the people that God dried up the waters to lead them to the promised land. Well, I will tell you that the God who did that for the Israelites did no less for me. And when I was drowning over my head in raging waters, God reached in, He took my hand, and He led me to His promised land. And that book is my altar of 12 stones. It has 12 chapters, which I call Stone 1, Stone 2, Stone 3, and so forth up to 12. And I wrote it to remember and to honor what God has done. So tonight, I talked about me a lot by way of introduction. At the end of that. Tomorrow and going forward, I'm going to focus on two thoughts. First, the God we worship is not a God of reason. He is not a God of logic, at least not logic in the way we humans understand the word. And second thought, if we commit ourselves to follow Him, we have to deal with stuff that is hard and scary. So tomorrow I'm going to ask you a question. And you can think about it until then, or not. And we'll just have a great old time tonight. But here's the question. What is the hardest thing you have ever learned as a Christian? Whether from books, or Sunday school, or in the Bible, or from life itself. What is the hardest concept to live by as a Christian? And that's all I'll say about that tonight. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow.